much for taking the time today to hear about Mintel's North America 2016 Consumer Trends. My name is Jenny Zegler, and I am a Consumer Trends Analyst here at Mintel, and part of the team that developed our 2016 trends. Today we'll be going through a little bit of an introduction into our annual trends project and the trends that resulted from that. And then we're going to be talking in depth about two of our 2016 North American consumer trends. The first one being the big brand theory, which has to do with consumers being more excited about hearing stories about companies and brands and really gaining more connection with the things that they're buying. And then we have I Get It, discussing the power of images, how people are using Instagram and Pinterest and emojis a lot more often to communicate. And then we'll also have time at the end for some Q&A. So feel free as you're listening to type anything into any questions you may have into your webinar interface. And we should have time at the end to answer some of those questions. As I mentioned, just to begin with, to lay some groundwork into what these trends are, this is part of Mintel's annual trends project. And we've done this for the past few years, and it's getting robust, more and more robust every single year. This year, we had Mintel offices in 5 different countries host brainstorming sessions that brought together analysts from around the world and across industries. So our beauty analysts, automotive analysts, financial services, insurance, food and drink, as well as telecommunications and high technology, all getting together in a room, talking about what's happening in their industries. What do they see going on? What are some really cool innovations? And so we had more than a dozen together and discuss their ideas, and those featured more than 100 of our analysts bringing in their opinions and their top innovations for the year. And so then we compared that to some of the Mintel trends that we monitor on our trends database every single day, and the momentum behind those. What do we see happening? But what we've created is in our annual trends project is a look at some trends that are just impactful for 2016. So these are different ideas that we really think are going to impact a broad consumer landscape for 2016 and potentially beyond across industries. So that resulted in 4 trends for 2016 in North America. As I mentioned, we're going to go in depth into 2 of those. But here we're going to look at the other 2, balance or bust, which finds that multifaceted consumers are finding harmony by going to extremes. And so they are, sometimes going to bacon fest, but then going on juice cleanses. Or maybe they're spending all weekend binging their new favorite TV show, but then they're going to make sure that during the week they're going to go out to dinner with friends or to concerts and actually be around people. And so people are finding those balance, and more often it's not necessarily a stigma if you are hanging out by yourself for a while, binge watching a TV show. It's not considered antisocial or being a couch potato anymore. It's more of a understood behavior. And then our other one is pride and persona, which finds that companies are looking to strengthen relationships with consumers by recognizing and reflecting our more diverse and open-minded society. So what we find there is in the wake of some movement in 2015 of gender identities and embracing the fluidity there, that people are looking for companies to showcase different genders and ages, backgrounds, races, and people of different abilities and disabilities in their advertisement, in their marketing communication, as well as in the products that they create. So 2015 saw a lot of movement with transgender celebrities on the cover of Time and Vanity Fair, as well as, that's moving into a whole new era with people looking for more diversity in their advertising. So looking for people with disabilities to be featured in Target ads and things like that. So it's recognizing where our society is going and being more accepting and giving equality for all. But today we'll be talking about just 2 of our consumer trends in depth, beginning with the big brand theory. And the big brand theory showcases that a brand story can make or break consumer purchases, which is driving the growth of craft and artisan and small batch, but not necessarily leaving big businesses behind. So with the big brand theory, this is really where we feel consumers are getting more and more excited about stories. So we'll be looking at what's happening in 2016. And you might notice on the screen that we have a few drawings. Those will be more explained and understood when we get to I Get It and talking about images. But these are emojis that we created for our trends to identify what trends and the momentum behind those. So here we have a cupcake and knitting needles, showcasing the emphasis on craftsmanship that this trend implies. So we do see that if we rewind to before the global financial crisis, we saw people living in McMansions, driving Hummers, supersizing things, and really just being kind of about conspicuous consumption. But now that after the financial crisis hit, people thought maybe this isn't really the right way to be living. Maybe we should be focusing more on right-sizing our purchases. And that came with a pledge to support small businesses. So people shopping at farmers markets, looking to gain more understanding about where their food comes from and that connection with the people who are growing it or making it, as well as Small Business Saturday, which follows Black Friday and gives people the opportunity to go to their local businesses and support those, just as they may have shopped at some big box stores on the Friday after Thanksgiving. So this is where we find consumers really being interested in finding connections when they're shopping and even with the brands that they're buying. And so this is definitely rooted in some trends that we see in the food and drink space, but also moving into a broader opportunity for crafts. We've seen a lot of interest in Etsy and people buying things that are handmade by artisans across the country and even the world. And so this gives an opportunity when you're buying something from Etsy or you're looking for a craft chocolate bar like the one you see on the slide here, that gives the connection with consumers to learn more about the maker or the production process or inspiration. So you're finding out more about where this product came from, and that's really exciting and connecting with consumers. So we do see this across categories, companies, and brands are providing a level of romance by regaling shoppers with an emotional story about the company's start, maybe an outlandish tale of a product creation. I don't know if you've ever heard the legend that a potato chip was, founded by somebody accidentally a slice fell into hot oil, and there it was. So something like that really gets consumers excited about, hey, this is something that, I might be able to create, or that is a product of a beautiful accident. And then also the insight into selection of signature ingredients. So they're loving the idea of getting more from their products, finding more things out about them, and that really fosters more of a connection. And so this is driving the growth of craft and artisan and small batch across a lot of categories, but it's not necessarily leaving big businesses behind. What we see big businesses doing are creating this umbrella approach. They have the flexibility to create these smaller brands and figure out what works. Maybe this is just a local brand, or maybe it's something that's across cities, like this fact about the world's top 10 hotel chains now have 113 different brands that allow consumers to book a room that fits not only their budget and their travel plans, but also their personality. So you can make sure that you're staying in a hotel that fits who you are, where you are, what you're doing, but also doesn't just look like any other hotel room that you might be stopping in any other city. It's really amplifying that experience, maybe even bringing in some of that Airbnb connection. So we do see that bigger brands have an opportunity to be in this trend and creating either smaller brands or maybe just communicating the authentic story that is behind some of their brands. A lot of old brands have those heritage and have those exciting stories, and they may be hundreds of years old, and that can still connect with consumers. So this is where the big brand theory really sums up that regardless of an owner's size, genuine stories help to form relationships with consumers. And I think that this is really powerful in that if you're giving them these stories, they may be more likely to be loyal. And then on top of that, they may actually be going out and telling their friends. You've told them this great story, and they're really happy to tell their friends about this product. And so it's getting more even grassroots marketing in that case as you're engaging consumers more often with these stories and getting them more excited about your product. The next time they go to the store, not only will they make sure to pick that up, but they're also potentially going to, tweet about it and put it on social media, or just tell their friend a story about a great product that they've just discovered. So looking at some Mintel consumer research data, we have a library of reports, and we go to those reports after we've started to develop these trends to find out what are some data points that summarize these trends, these directions. As I mentioned, the big brand theory really is taking roots and is founded in the food and beverage space, specifically with craft in the alcohol space, even more specifically in the beer space. So there's more than 4,000 craft breweries in the United States right now. They open at a rate of 2 a day. So that's a lot of choice for consumers, a lot of stories to be heard. But when we ask consumers about their habits, we find that 48% of U.S. beer drinkers ages 22 plus agree that a craft style beer from a large national brewer tastes just as good as beer from small specialty craft brewers. So they're motivated by taste. In addition, if we look at the bottom stat from 72% of Canadian beer drinkers agree that the taste of beer is more important to them than the brand which produces it. So even though there's tons of choice out there for people and they're able to find out more and maybe even go to their local brew pub and hear the story about where this is founded, it's also still motivated on taste and on brand. We also see with the big brand theory that consumers aren't necessarily immediately connected to whether big or small is the right thing for them. So 36% of U.S. consumers trust big companies to do the right thing, while 49% of U.S. consumers trust small companies to do the right thing. There's a split there in terms of whether big or small is the way to go. And of course, there are industries where small might not necessarily be immediately attractive or make you feel safe. Things like telecommunications. You probably don't want a craft cell phone provider because you're not going to get service when you travel potentially. Insurance, banking, automotive. Again, you probably aren't looking for, just startup brands that are building cars out of their garage because you want that safety and that reliability. But there's still a way that those brands in those spaces where bigger companies are more trustworthy can gain consumers' trust and can tell them their stories. Maybe it's about the person who made the car or somebody who developed a new product at a bank because this is something that they thought they needed and that society needed. And so there's more stories to be told by companies of any size. Another interesting example, 31% of Canadian adults trust small local banks and credit unions more than large banks, while 29% of Canadian adults agree that a bigger bank offers better services than smaller banks or credit unions. And so once again, that split, and it may be by personal preference. Maybe you are somebody who travels a lot. So you want to make sure you have a network of ATMs wherever you might be. But then you may also be somebody who just wants that personal service. And when you go into your local branch, that they know you, they know what you might need, and it's not just a sales pitch. So this is where consumers are mitigating. Is big or small the way to go? And sometimes they can just be captured by the story that consumers or that companies are telling and not necessarily immediately decide this is where I'm only going to shop small all the time. So where do we see the big brand theory going next? We do feel that we've entered an era where the power of the story and the authenticity of the connection can supersede those aspirations, such as shopping small. Even smaller companies are banding together to be able to gain as much awareness as bigger companies might have through their $1-million marketing budget. A great example of that is Artizone, which is an online forum in specific cities in the United States where you can buy goods from local artisans. There are people in your city who are making these food and drink brands that you may not necessarily hear of. They may not have a storefront that you can go in and immediately purchase. So you can purchase them through Artizone. That is giving you more information about them, who they are, and they will mail this to your home. So giving those people the power of numbers to be able to collectively work together and also elevate their own craft along the way. We also see that big companies aren't left out of the big brand theory, as we've discussed. So another great example of that is that in 2015, the department store Nordstrom launched a capsule collection featuring products from their stable of famous designers that so many of their shoppers go there for, but they were using textiles made by Peace & Company, which aims to end global poverty by providing sustainable employment opportunities to women artisans. So a woman could go into Nordstrom, see a Tory Burch jacket that she loves and is a brand that she's very excited about, but it also comes with that story of the Peace & Company materials. So the next time that somebody says, compliments her on her jacket, she's able to say, oh, I really love it, but it also is doing good. Well, I also look good, hopefully. Another great example of that is Starbucks. And in Washington, D.C. and New York City, they've partnered with 2 local companies that are making food products in that region. So in DC, it's DC Sweet Potato Cake, and in New York City, it's Bantam Bagels. And so adding those to their menu. So the same parfaits and bistro boxes that you can get on their menu, you can also now get the Bantam Bagels or DC Sweet Potato Cake in either New York City or DC. And so giving that connection to a local artisan, gaining that awareness. They may not necessarily be able to have shops all over the city like Starbucks might be able to, but they're still being able to gain that distribution in Starbucks locations and gain exposure with new consumers potentially through that. So it's helping Starbucks get more local, support more local businesses, but it's also helping these local companies gain more awareness and potentially more fans because they're able to purchase something local alongside the other things on the Starbucks menu. One of the things that we think really roots the big brand theory in 2016 is the fact that we're seeing the pace of mergers and acquisitions increase. And so with these mergers and acquisitions, we see bigger companies buying these smaller companies. The ones that are making waves that people are getting more excited about are now being absorbed into these larger companies. And so with that, the challenge there remains to keep that brand soul and make sure that the reason why somebody might love that small brand is not going to disappear when it's owned by a larger company. There's a lot of skepticism from consumers that that's immediately what happens. So there might have to be some reassurance on behalf of both brands, saying we're going to keep things the same, we're going to have the same processes in place and the same people in place. It's also an opportunity for that big company to learn from that small company. What does that small company do and why do people love it so much? And how can that be reflected in maybe the other brands that are available in that company? At the same time, these mergers and acquisitions aren't just small companies being bought by bigger companies. It's also bigger companies merging with bigger companies. And that really reflects the need for companies to reassure consumers, we're going to be the same thing, we have your best interest at heart. Again, there's a lot of skepticism that comes from this. Consumers are thinking that maybe large corporations don't have people at their heart of their goals. Maybe it's more about profit. And so these stories help to connect consumers with companies, help them learn more about what their values are, and have them get more excited about brands. And so that could lead to loyalty and ideally even to the grassroots marketing where you're turning consumers into advocates for your brand, where they're excited about telling your story and telling their friends that they bought this product and maybe even buying something for their friends and family because they're so excited about supporting your brand because they love the story that you told. So moving on to our second trend that we'll talk about today, which is I get it. EYE get it, meaning that there's a real connection with images here. The old adage that an image is worth 1,000 words, but consumers are relying on it more for time saving. So helping to consumers just immediately tell a story real quick or tell their friends this is what we're doing. So this trend does have a lot to do with emojis, which is why we have those on the screen here. So the two eyeballs connecting with this I get it part of the trend. And then on the left, we have a drawing of a woman with a light bulb over her head, really meaning that she's connecting or maybe getting a brand new idea, which is what this trend is about. And so this trend is rooted in the idea that consumers, their attention spans are shortening. You know, you can very easily spend a whole bus ride or train ride or even evening in front of the TV scrolling through social media feeds and maybe just absorbing things really quickly through a headline and not necessarily delving deep into the story or finding out more from the people that you might be connected with or the media outlets that you're reaching. So consumers shortening attention spans is what's driving this. And a good example of that is that shopping has now become as easy as the buy it pins on Pinterest. And so you're scrolling through Pinterest, you see something great, you may put it on your pin board and remember, you know, later on, maybe I'll buy that for mom for Mother's Day. But then you're going to have to go out of that window and then go into your web browser, try to find where this is purchased. Maybe you want to see if it's available cheaper somewhere else. These buy it pins eliminate all of that. You're able to see that and instantly say, I want that, I need that now, and be connected with the brand that's selling it, which helps consumers save time, also helps them remember that that's something that they might be looking for. We also see more and different types of visual communication. So Pinterest being one, Periscope being another, where you can live broadcast something that you're seeing. In the past week, actually, Periscope has announced that they are adding GoPro interface, so you're able to use your GoPro camera just like you would use your phone to live broadcast. And I also just read an article about how food and drink brands are using Periscope. So Coca-Cola, Nestle Drumstick ice cream brand, as well as Doritos, all using Periscope as another way to connect with consumers. And so this is the newest way, but we do recognize that communicating through images dates back to prehistoric cave drawings. This isn't necessarily new, but technology is making this more newer, dynamic, and even quicker. So with images, there's definitely a trend happening right now around emojis, and the fact that consumers are using that to help communicate with each other. It's fast, it's simple, it's easy to send. If I ask my friend if she wants to go out for dinner tonight and I get a smiley face back, I'm going to know that she says yes to that. Maybe we'll start to exchange emojis of food to be like, do you want tacos? Do you want hamburgers? What do you want tonight? And so it's an easy way to just quickly and easily send things back and forth. It's been started to be used by brands. You'll see there on the screen on the right a Chevy press release that came out last year that only used emojis. So communicating to consumers through that, it might be a little bit cryptic. So the next day or two after they launched this press release in emoji, they also released it in English, in written words, so you can understand what it said for those people who may not necessarily immediately connect all of those things together. But we do see emojis growing extremely fast. And so in 2015, a Welsh linguistics professor noted and published a finding that emojis are the fastest growing form of language ever. And so it's being used by a lot of people to communicate with each other. There's also the opportunity for that to be a universal language. So again, if I'm able to send a smiley face to somebody, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to speak English. Hopefully they understand that that's a good idea, or I agree, and it's not necessarily a language barrier there. It's something that is just based on emotion. We also see that companies are getting into this space and releasing branded emojis. So companies like Tim Hortons and Food and Wine Magazine have developed their own branded emojis. So the Tim Hortons is the egg emoji based on their Canadian roots and released for Canada Day, including the Tim Hortons coffee image, but also including other typically Canadian things like a moose and a beaver, and so connecting with consumers there and helping them have those conversations in a fun manner with their friends. And Food and Wine Magazine developed gourmet emojis, and so you're able to send a cronut to a friend or a really gourmet-looking burger and elevate that food discussion for all of those millions of foodies out there. So why do we think consumers will buy into this? It does have a lot to do with time savings, which is probably no surprise. Everyone is busier and busier and shorter on time. So 31% of U.S. consumers have already used mobile payments like Apple Pay, helping them save time, not necessarily have to worry, where is that, where is my wallet, and being able to just easily pay with their phone. We also see consumers looking for time savings in other categories. So 59% of U.S. consumers agree that it's worth spending more for cleaning products that save time. It's probably pretty simple. Not everybody wants to spend all day cleaning your house or your apartment. And then 53% of Canadians indicate that the time it takes to prepare a ready meal is among their pre-purchase considerations. So in addition to maybe nutrition and the flavor and the brand, they're also looking to how fast is this going to be able to be prepared, because people are short on time. We also see consumers already active in sharing images. So 62% of U.S. consumers have shared photos or videos that they took themselves online. So sharing that maybe with their family, friends, also potentially just, posting that to Instagram to get people's reactions as well. 34% of U.S. adults who are the primary or secondary household shoppers prefer to see symbols rather than words on beverage packaging. So we do see a lot more consumers in the food and drink space turning packages over, wanting to find more about that nutrition, those ingredients, claims, all of that sort of thing. So if they're able to maybe cut down on that time and just see an image that showcases to them that this is organic or fair trade, that's going to help them make their decision a little bit quicker at the shelf. So with I Get It, where do we see this going next? There are more visual functionality elements that we see happening. This is an example of Emoji. which is a company that has emojis that you can use in communication, but you also can embed those with information. So as you see on the screen, the Starbucks image, I might be able to send that to one of my friends to be able to say, let's meet for coffee, and that Starbucks emoji will be embedded with the exact Starbucks location that I'm thinking of. So we don't necessarily have to discuss where it is, it's exactly where it is, and you're able to understand that very quickly. So we think that that will continue with I Get It, that people and groups will be able to communicate and interact through visuals more easily. We will also see more functionality from emojis, just like that Inmoji. You may have heard the example that Domino's has created a program in which consumers can order pizza just by texting an emoji. So you do have to have a profile on Domino's.com so they know that you don't just want a slice with pepperoni. That is the standard emoji image of a pizza, and you're getting your Hawaiian or your barbecue, whatever your favorite pizza is from Domino's. But you're able to just, once you have that profile set up, text an image of an emoji to Domino's and get your pizza quick and easy. So that's some of the things that we see evolving in terms of using emojis. We're also seeing visuals get more interactive and fun. And so GIFs is a good example of this. Moving images, things like dogs eating peanut butter sandwiches. So able to maybe entertain somebody a little bit more, make sure that you're getting your point across potentially more than an emoji can. And we do see that Facebook is exploring ways to enable GIF functionality for brands. There's also things on the internet where you can create your own GIFs, maybe of inside jokes with your friends or your favorite scene from one of your movies. So you're able to use that when you're talking to your friends. We also see images getting not only more interactive, but also more immersive. So in 2016, we're going to see a lot of advancements around augmented and virtual reality, these being led by the Oculus Rift headset as well as the Samsung Gear, and Microsoft also has its own headset that they're testing. So people will be able to experience things more fully. The image on the screen is of the Microsoft headset being used to play Minecraft. So having that be all over your living room versus just on the screen of your tablet or your laptop. Now, these headsets are pretty cost intensive. They're in the hundreds of dollars and also often require a high-powered computer to be able to use. So this might not be something that everyone can use, but something that's getting more exciting. We're seeing a lot of brands at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, using these to showcase to people how their rehabbed room might look if they are in the home improvement space. If they're going to Lowe's has the functionality that they were testing at CES that shows people what is this room going to look like, what paint colors, maybe what cabinets, maybe even the new appliances that they're looking at. But again, this might not necessarily be something that everybody will have in their homes by the end of 2016. A more entry-level version of this would be Google's Cardboard. And so this is a cardboard sleeve, as the name implies, and you're able to slide your existing smartphone into there, and with the right app, be able to turn that into a virtual reality viewer. It has a much more attractive price point at $18. So being able to experience this without necessarily having to get the high-powered computer and the headset. We have seen that New York Times and InStyle magazine mailed these to their subscribers to help them unlock additional content. The InStyle magazine content, you could see a 360-degree view of one of their cover shoots. So be able to experience that more fully than you could probably even through a magazine feature or an online video. So allowing consumers to think more differently about images and being more excited about the way that images can communicate with them. So to sum up, I Get It. We do see that in 2016 and beyond, brands must find ways to leverage these universally quick and comprehensible visual media, or being risk-less, feeling frowny face, as we like to say, using that emoji to replace some of those words, which is what this trend is kind of all about. So as I mentioned, just to wrap up, this is part of an overall consumer trends project from Mintel. We have the 4 North American consumer trends, 2 of which we talked in depth about today, but we also have consumer trends in Europe, Brazil, and China. We release global food and drink trends, global beauty trends, global packaging trends, and U.S. food service trends. So please feel free to visit Mintel.com if you want information about any more of those. We also will be able to answer some questions right now. So we'll throw it over to the Q&A if we have those ready to go. Sorry, the screen is a little bit small. So building off the big brand series, you have an example of how a big company has communicated its story in an authentic and relatable way. That's a really great question and something that we're seeing happen a lot more often. A really great example of that happening right now is Oprah and the Weight Watchers relaunch. And so she's bringing more of that human element to Weight Watchers, showcasing that she is a person who has been dealing with this for quite a long time. We've all seen her go through those different stages with her weight loss and hoping to gain more access to that and more help. I think even this week they announced that she has lost 26 pounds already while she's been on Weight Watchers. So helping to connect people with the reality of that situation, not just saying, here's Slim Fast and this is what you can do and this is how you can eat it, connecting to the fact that this is an overall process for consumers. Another great example is before the ESPY Awards, when Caitlyn Jenner accepted her Arthur Ashe for Courage Award, Google had this really emotional ad about a gym in Kansas City, I think it was, that has carved out this niche with transgender athletes. And so people who are going through a gender change and how they're dealing with the hormones changing their body. And so it was a really great way, and they told this story just about this gym and the people who go to this gym and why they love this gym, why this has empowered them. And at the very end, you learn that it's because of Google that people found this out. And so there's a really great opportunity for a lot of different brands in a lot of different spaces to tell those stories and to connect with consumers in terms of what those stories are and how people can get more excited about the things that are happening with those. And the next one is, how do you anticipate the move to emojis in communication will affect the Cpgs and in-store experience? That's a really great question. I think that there could be more opportunity for interaction. Maybe this is something where you have people who engaging them and asking them, do you like this product? Do you like the way this is set up? And staying more with emojis. There's also the beacon technology that's beginning to be installed in some stores where you can, if people have opted in to potentially Target's app or other locations, that you can ping them and say, we know that you're in Walgreens right now, and we know that maybe you have a purchasing habit of buying chocolate or gum, and maybe texting them those emojis and have some fun things of, hey, it's summertime, here's a sunshine emoji and some sunglasses, and don't forget about your sunscreen. So I think that there's more opportunities with those interactions. We have seen emojis on packaging. So in Canada, Pepsi released a Pepsi emoji campaign this summer that put emojis on packaging, but also released a whole keyboard of Pepsi emojis for people to use to communicate. So people are using that more on the branded side, but also potentially getting the opportunity to interact with consumers. What are the next emojis we should be having? What are the things that you love to use to communicate with your friends? And can we use those on packaging next? One of the examples that we created when we were thinking about these trends is potentially the idea to have your own emoji creator. So something that you might want to use all the time. Maybe you always call your friends mermaids. And so if your friends are all mermaids, can I get an emoji that's created of mermaids to be able to send back and forth to my friends so I don't have to always say it, and there it is. And maybe it's also just mine and something that I can share with my friends. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities for brands to interact with that space beyond just the emoji, the branded emojis. I think that there's, as you mentioned, a good in-store opportunity. We're seeing that with the virtual and augmented reality. I think emojis could also work there, maybe just on those shelf displays and getting people more active in that space. All right. We have another one. So as mergers and acquisitions increase pace, how can big companies fit in with the big brand theory? That's a really interesting question. We did talk about that a little bit. I think you need to maintain the soul of the company that you're purchasing, and help consumers feel that you're maintaining that, or maybe even being honest and saying we're going to learn from this. Maybe a large food company has purchased a small batch company that always has organic and has a lot of traceability. Maybe they're able to say, we've learned from this small brand, and we're going to be adding that to our larger brands, the brands that you know and love and that have been around for years. We're going to start to add the traceability that we've learned from this small brand that's now part of our family, and taking that into account. It could even be the flavors that they're learning from the production process. I think there's a lot of opportunities for the bigger companies to learn from smaller companies, but also just for any time an acquisition happens, reassuring those brand loyalists that this is something that you have their best interest at heart, and that you are going to maintain the things that they do love about that brand. All right. Well, I think that's it. I don't see any other questions popping up. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with us. And I do definitely appreciate your time today. It was a very exciting opportunity for us to talk more about our trends. Thanks, and have a good afternoon.